I try to do that sometimes.
The thing that drives me is like when everybody gets full screen, it's like I'm trying to work on something and it's like.
Yeah.
Hey, now we're ready to see.
But when you take the next.
Well, I did to this.
I have to, no, it turns eight.
You were ready to see.
Yes.
Totally. First.
Is the applicant for 1923 Maybank project? Okay. Voting on it, right? Even without a presentation.
Yeah, we've done that in the past.
So we're recording.
Yeah. Ready to go? All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the August 19th, 2024 meeting of the City of Charleston's Design Review Board. My name is Erica Chase, the board's chairperson. The members of the board with us tonight are Ashley Jackrell, Aaron Stevens, Stephanie Tillerson should be arriving in about 15 minutes, Ben Whitener, Lucas Boyd, and Andy Smith. Members of city staff with us tonight are David Meeks, Brad Thomas, and Patrick Carlson. We do not have any board members that are recused from any projects today and do not have any agenda items that have been deferred from today's meeting. We also have no public comments submitted. The order of the meeting will be as follows. David will give an introduction for any new projects with a context overview. Then the applicant team may have 10 minutes to go through their presentation. If you need time beyond 10 minutes, please let us know at the start of your presentation. We will then have board questions and then public comments. David will then give city staff recommendations, and then the applicant team may have 5 minutes to respond or clarify to any of the items discussed during the public comments or city staff comments. The board will then enter into discussion and voting. The applicant may only clarify inaccurate information during that time. If everyone could please silence or turn off all cell phones. And I do want to remind anyone from the public here that our comments are limited to site design and architecture only. Our board does not have authority over zoning issues such as land use, building density, or traffic. So with that, we'll get started with agenda item number 1, 1923-1925 Maybank Highway, requesting approval for demolition of a single-story ranch house over 50 years of age. Is the applicant here? Okay, great.
Thank you. Just, you can step on up. I'm going to just show a few context slides first. If I could direct your attention to the screen. The red thumbtack is the location of this property, 1923 to 1925 Maybank Highway. This is in James Island. A little bit closer view. It's directly next door to Buck Lumber. This is a better view. The building in question sits behind these other buildings up on Maybank. Here's Maybank Highway.
You mind if I point it out? It's difficult to discern with, so it's this building, obviously where the red dot is, but this is it's got some tree cover that comes from the adjacent property line here.
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
a
the ranch house.
L-shaped building like this. View from the street, this is looking back towards the building. You can see it's back behind this other building. It's a little bit closer view. And this is from the front door of the building looking out towards Maybank. This is between the two buildings looking out to Maybank here. And then between these buildings looking out to Maybank here. I don't have the interior photos here. Oh, here
We
they are.
received them.
Okay. I do have them here, I'm sorry. Let me flip through the interior slides. Did you want to, you can jump in and direct me to.
Maybe just jump back to the overall site.
Sure.
So all this is one TMS number, it has 4 buildings on it. So there's a The building has been added to and deleted to over probably the last, I don't know, 50 or 60
Or the
years.
former veterinary.
That's the former veterinary building, which sits right here. It's got some kennels attached to it and some other wash stations, et cetera, that sit on this corner of the property. This building in the front is it was actually an old farmhouse from probably early 1900s, 1920s on the property. This is the ranch building in question that was built around 50 years ago. I don't think we have an exact date, but somewhere in the abundance of caution, it's around 50 years old. And then this is a metal warehouse that was constructed probably the last 20 years or so. So that's the building which we're opting for we need to take down to, our overall goal is to rehabilitate the two buildings in the front. And we need to add parking. This building is also in extremely poor condition now. But in order to utilize the site, we're trying to add some parking to it. That's really the main goal here. It's kind of self-explanatory at this point. It's an obsolete building. There are, I don't know, 10,000 of them on James Island. And it's, that's really what we're asking for, is to be able to take that.
Thank you. Could you state your name for the record,
Yeah,
please?
sorry, I'm John Goldfarb with Rickon Builders.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board? Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this application? David, staff comments, please.
Thank you. Staff observations. In the ordinance that discusses demolition in the purview of the design review board, it states that the board should consider the architectural and aesthetic features of the structure, the nature and quality of the structure, including its architectural fabric, any historical significance, the nature and quality of the surrounding area, and the structure's contribution to the overall streetscape of the area. The building in question is set back from Maybank Highway close to 145 feet and is behind another building. The building is only visible from Maybank Highway and a small window is driving by. Staff comment number one, staff does not view this structure as having any significant architectural or aesthetic features nor historical significance. Staff is supportive of the demolition. We do recommend approval for demolition.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to respond to or clarify? We are now in board discussion and or a motion.
I make a motion for the approval of the demolition.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of demolition. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any further discussion? I'll roll. Ashley,
Yes, in favor.
Aaron,
Yes, in favor.
Ben,
Yes, in favor.
Lucas.
Yes, in favor.
I'm also yes in favor. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 3655 West Ashley Circle, requesting conceptual approval for a multifamily development with 288 units.
I have just a few context slides to show everybody first. You look at the screen and see the red thumbtack just off West Ashley Circle. There's a closer view. This is on the east side of West Ashley Circle. There's power lines that run through the site. And the view into the site is off to our right. And then off to our right again as you're turning onto West Ashley Circle. And then this is the view into the site under the power lines. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Let me know when you like to advance the slide.
Hey everyone, I'm going to start things off. My name is Andrew Todd Berg. I'm a landscape architect with Finley Morton. David, do we want to go into the colored site plan? We'll just start there. So I wanted to start by just providing some context of the site. There are many constraints on the site. As David mentioned, there is a large power line easement that runs. Actually, do you mind just backing up?
Sure.
So we have a large power line and gas easement that runs through the center of the site. It's about 300 feet long in here. It also runs diagonally up to the northwest. So that has a gas transmission line as well as power transmission lines. There was also it has not started construction yet, but it's been approved, a water line, transmission line that runs on the south of the site. With CWS, that's like I think it's a 36-inch water main. And anyway, so there's lots of utilities going on. Additionally, this is the Church Creek Canal. right here. So we are in a very much impaired stormwater basin, probably the most impaired in the city of Charleston. And the canal right here for context, the church sits right here. It's the street that runs through there. And then this is the pinch point that runs under the tracks of the entire stormwater basin that runs all the way up above Beesbury and to the east. The other part that's a little hard with this site is it is very low in elevation and we're in a floodplain. And within the Church Creek Basin, the city of Charleston, we need to mitigate for any fill that we have within the floodplain. So you'll notice this site is fairly large, but we are trying to keep our development area into these two small pods. So what we have down here is the multifamily development that David mentioned, which is really what we have our detail on. And then as a phase 2 area up here is a small commercial village. So having said all that, the last thing that is a little bit challenging is the zoning for the site, which is GP zoning. If you guys aren't familiar, there are lots of, it's a kind of like a riff on form-based code that the city used to have. So it's kind of the remnants of that. So we have to have a certain amount of frontages on the street, or buildings have to be close to the street. It really all depends on the type roads that you pick. So I think specifically here for this interior area, I think we need 85%, or maybe it's 90% street coverage. And we have to have, if we don't cover it with the building, then we have to have little walls that come out to make sure we hit that, and our buildings have to be within 5 feet. So having said all that, I want to thank David and the rest of the zoning team, because we had a lot of back and forth on getting this site plan to work with all of these constraints, as well as fit within the GP zoning. So there's been several years of back and forth on getting this site plan to where it works. So the other thing to say, that's just a little bit of context, is because of the floodplain fill mitigation, what we're doing is we have an area that we are excavating across on the other side of the circle behind Walmart, and that is the area that we are mitigating for with our fill on this site, and we're tight on our numbers. So I just kind of want to emphasize again that that's why we have these development areas, and really outside of those areas, these areas are very low. You can see this blue shaded, there's lots of wetlands that run through here, and these are down to elevations like 3 and 4, so they're all very low and wet. Having said all that, I can just do a quick run through the site, and I'm going to hand it off to our architects here. So we did our best to get, and actually maybe, can you flip to A6, David? And we'll just kind of talk a little bit about, so you can see some context. So A6 is is kind of an aerial view here with the model that we created. So you can see in the areas that we can front the circle as part of the zoning code allows, we have some townhomes here that are going to be up close to the circle to get as much presence as we can. Unfortunately, between the power line easement and the wetlands on the rest of the site, we cannot really front any more buildings up on the road. We also have a lot of grand trees on the site, and we did already go through BZA and get approval. So as you come in, we have this nice roundabout, and that leads us into the internal circulation of the site. And then you can see here, this is the road that will go to the phase 2 portion, which is the commercial village. I think from there, I'll let Alberto take over and talk about the site and how it flows and how the building relates to our site layout.
Thank you. I can go worse than that. Hey, board staff, thank you so much for your time today. Hope you guys were safe a couple of weeks ago from the storms. So this is our project. We're really excited about it. There was some really interesting opportunities, to create something special as you process or the procession into the site. You will notice that all the buildings, something that we wanted to do was actually make the side of the buildings feel like the front of the buildings. So you see that as a motif through the whole development. We'd actually increase the length of the side of the buildings. So proportionally, it actually feels like a building. You can see some of the zoom in renderings. David, if you go to A2, please.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay.
Alberto Cevallos with the Housing Studio.
Thank you.
Yes. So this is the view from West Ashley Circle. Of course, we're really pinch the fronting, like Andrew said. We have grand trees, we have the power lines, and of course, we have wetlands and different things going on. So we wanted to pull some architecture out, and we wanted that architecture to be proportionally 2 stories. And then if you go to the next slide, please. And then also what we wanted to create too was this actual views into the site that are more informal in nature to help you pull you into the site. If you go to the next slide, please. As you turn around the main street, we wanted to create a moment of arrival. And we have those 3-story buildings that all have been kinked and angled, so they actually face in and or out. But also that gives us the opportunity to give you a little hint of your final destination, which is the leasing building that you can see between those 2 3-story buildings. And you can see there how that proportion of the length on the side of the building really truly reads like the front and not the side of a building, not the back of a building. If you go to the next, please. Next, please. And this is where Andrew was before. And something that we also wanted to do is the massing and the scale and the articulation of the buildings to start at a 3-story and then slowly go to 3-story and then a 4-story at the very end of the site. We don't really have much architecture as context. It's pretty much just nature and the infrastructure of the highways. And then eventually phase 2, which will be connected to phase 1, which is retail for the mixed use part of the project. But we wanted to create something and we wanted to embrace the angles that all of these madness ended up with. So what we thought was really important is to embrace them at the entry. And then there is a wetland that comes out into the site on the back that really angles this building out, which we thought was a really interesting architectural and a scale type feature. So what we decided to do is on the opposite side of the street, also angle that leasing building, which is going to become the jewel box where a lot of that energy comes in. And that is the beginning of what we like to call an urban oasis. So we decided to stretch the amenities instead of being just one big, massive 2-story club, break them into multiple buildings, creating formal and formal courtyards in between them, spaces for introverts and extroverts to be able to enjoy the community. If you go to David, please, to 810.
We are getting close to our 10-minute mark, just a second.
And so there's a datum line on the buildings, 3-story buildings that relate to the 2-story buildings in the center. Of course, the whole purpose of this was to create this oasis in the center that, you know, had parallel parking spaces, that had these buildings that had these really active type of uses on them, and courtyards that really activated and animated the street, people, stoops out into the street. So we wanted to create a heart for the community to be at, and, you know, a sense of place, which is always important to us.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the team?
I have a couple. I'm gonna get started. How many, in the question of height, and mass, how many units would be considered an entitled right here on this site by land mass?
Entitled units for the site. So in the GP, there's not a density cap.
Okay. And then I know you guys talked a lot about the wetlands and the fill and everything. From a design perspective, are there materials that you've incorporated to further help mitigate any water concerns that there may be?
Everything. So yeah, this is gonna be a only the areas that have to be impervious are going to be impervious. So everything else you see is going to have to be some sort of pervious material. So, you know, sidewalks, roads, probably impervious. Everything else you're looking at, a lot of the courtyard area that you can see is paved, is gonna have to be pervious material. And that's just really, even if we didn't want to do that, which I'm always a fan of, we have to on this site, because our stormwater is going to be a challenge on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ben.
I've got a couple questions. I've heard you talk about the wetlands and it looks like there's a lot of them on the site. And it appears like, trying to find the drawing. Yeah, like if you look at C2.-02 and the building, the canted building.
All right.
It's a large file, right?
Yeah.
It says be after the architectural drawing.
It's page 7.
Oh.
Yeah.
A7?
C2 dash, no,
Sorry.
page 7, C2-02. Yeah, if you zoomed in right there,
There we go.
well, I don't know if it shows you. Does it show you? Yeah, like right here, like the wetland.
Yes.
I mean, does it literally stop right there? Or is there something
Yes,
you're doing?
it
to
does. So right now, it's so there used to be phosphate mining on the site. So the wetlands that come up into the site are old ditches. And the way that wetland goes right now is it angles off to the side. And so we are currently in our wetland permitting phase right now to put a hard edge on that wetland. It's right now it's a bit of a drop off, maybe about 4 or 5 feet. And it just goes, it's a sheer drop right there and it's kind of a mound off to the side. So our plan is to put a hard edge on the side of it, and we're looking at possible opportunities to cross it with a boardwalk as well.
So that's why the building came.
Correct.
It goes over it a little bit now on your drawing, but I guess eventually that building will not go over the wetland.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, we're not planning on filling that portion right there. There's a small finger of wetland that has been deemed not a very functioning wetland through the center that will be filled.
And for the one that Ben was just asking you about, I guess, is it piped under that drive?
It's being crossed over, yeah.
Okay.
I guess that leads to the second just question is, because the TRC process has begun.
Yes, yeah, we have gone through the preliminary TRC and we have gotten our BZA approval for some tree removals.
Okay.
As well as a lot of coordination with the stormwater team.
Have you met with any of the surrounding neighborhoods and neighbors for this project?
So, the closest neighbor we're gonna have is, when we get to our phase 2 portion, which is gonna be the church. We have not met with them yet. Well, I met with them very early on, to potentially discuss, so they know what's happening, because we've been working with the stormwater department to potentially grant them an easement, over on the low side, so on the east side of the property, as well as the church is looking about giving them an easement as well on the west side of their property, as that church creek ditch runs through the center there. Because the city is currently working on a plan with biohabitats. They're just about done there about restoring that channel there, adding a little bit more life to it. There was at one point going to be a nature trail that runs through, but that is off the table.
Okay, and the last question is, this development that we're seeing here, that's all considered to be one phase, that's all gonna be built?
Correct, that and then just an emergency exit that goes up to Beast Berry, so we can have 2 entrances for fire code.
Okay.
And I have a question, kind of building on some of Ben's questions. So where you're bringing in fill for roads and all, how high above existing grade is it approximately?
So if you're looking at the site right there, the highest point is close to where we have our roundabout and our townhomes. So there, we're not bringing any fill. It falls off towards the edge. We're currently working on seeing how low we can drop the parking on the outer line. So we're playing the game between getting it as low as possible without having the parking lots flood, because that's not very convenient for people to get to their cars. So down around the edges, we're looking at 4-ish feet of fill. And then in the center, it kind of undulates. So there's some low depressions where you're gonna have more like 6 to 8 feet, but they're small, kind of isolated areas. Looking like more like 3-ish feet across the rest of the site, and then up to working at grade as you get closer to the circle.
And where the like parking lots in the back
Mhm.
are like 4
plus or minus feet above grade.
Yep.
Are those gonna be held in place with a retaining wall, or is it just gonna be sloped
Most-
down, or how?
Most
is it gonna be
likely.
managed?
So our stormwater approach is gonna be a bit atypical here, and we've been working with the stormwater department on this. Because we are so close to that pinch point I was talking about of the basin. Rather than work on a traditional pond design, we are looking at creating more volume within the floodplain. So essentially, this site and, the Church Creek Basin floods. So rather than trying to create a water, an area to stage water and hold it, we want to get our water out faster, and we want to create more area around the site for that bank when it overtops to fill in, so it doesn't, affect our site and any other sites in the area upstream or downstream. So most likely, it's going to be a hard edge or a quick drop down the grade. And that's to create as much volume as possible within the floodplain. Does that make sense?
Okay, question.
Go ahead.
About the leasing office, I'm just curious if it's planned for 1 story or 2 stories?
It's a 2-story mass, but it's a 1-story.
Vaulted ceiling?
Per zoning code, we have to do 2 stories.
And then a question about how the trash is being managed. I see the one compactor. How is the trash from each building going to be taken out to those management?
Most of it is valet.
Thank you.
May want to describe how tall our central buildings are as well for Daniel.
Yeah, they're pretty much all 2-story masses. And the very right side of the pool, we actually have an elevated terrace, so you can actually occupy that 2nd story. And look down into the terrace, and from the apartments, you'll be able to see that too.
Do you mind stating your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Chuck Travis, principal of the housing studio.
Thank you. Any additional questions? I did have one, just to make sure I'm clear. The commercial portion shown in some of the plans is not included in any of your submittals or this approval. Is that correct?
Correct. David asked us to show it for context,
Understood.
that knowing that that's coming down the pike.
Okay.
And it's part of the zoning requirements for GP to have a mixed use development.
Got it. Are there any members of the public here that would like to speak on this application?
No, that was my question.
Can I actually have a question going off of that then? The roadway that connects the two or the drive, is that being constructed completely and does it just terminate?
So it'll go up and to the right, David, if you want to show. So you can kind of see phase lines here in black. So it's going to come up to over here. This is where the median break is. This is going to be a full access. This is going to be a right in, right out.
So that access will be fully constructed?
Yeah, so that'll be fully constructed, to be determined whether or not it's going to be usable for residents or just as an emergency access for now. But it will at the very least be an emergency access, but also on the table is for it to be another access for the residents. And that's really gonna be dependent on how fast phase 2 goes and whether or not there's gonna be a lot of construction there.
One question.
Go ahead, Ben.
I'm just interested in the comment from the architect. You talk a little bit about your design inspiration for the amenity, or not the amenity, the leasing office?
No comment.
Good. I'm just curious.
Well, I think there's, there was the opportunity to create something special, and we tried to keep the material palette extremely calm through the whole development. But we spice it up a little bit by having the gable brick and type detail, which we would like for that to be more of like a stucco type element. And it just really creates something modern that was just slightly interesting and unique, that also related to the pitch roofs of the other buildings, but also to the 2-story elements of the townhomes, which have some modern elements to them. So we're just creating something special that pull your eye into simple but special.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone from the public here to speak on this application? With none, David, staff comments, please.
Thank you. Staff observations. Staff met with the applicant in a pre-submittal meeting. We were complimentary of the layout of the project and made a few suggestions. Not all the building designs had been fully developed at our most meetings. The residential buildings, co-work buildings, fitness buildings are all nice designs and are supported by staff. The height, scale, and mass is in keeping with the area. The mix of the 1 to 3 story buildings gives variety to the project. We like that the smaller townhomes are up on West Ashley Circle. The more condensed parking on the exterior of the site is good and makes for a more pedestrian-friendly atmosphere on the interior of the site. The 4 rows of parking proposed in the southeast side of the lot is good that the applicants are providing extra wide planting strip down the middle of the lot. It's also good that the mechanical units are being planned for the roof and out of sight. Staff comment 1, the staff recommends a restudy of the leasing. The 2 in facades seem a little out of place with the rest of the project. We felt that the building looked more like a civic building than leasing. We are okay with the leasing office standing out from the rest of the buildings, but we'd like to see a different option. One issue staff has is the height. This looks to be a one or 2 story building, but it appears to be the same height as the 3-story buildings. Staff comment number 2, staff recommends a restudy of the pool lounge amenity building. Both the design direction and the dark color. We feel it is warehouse looking. One solution would be to more closely match the building that it's attached to. You think we need to see these as I'm talking about them, or just keep going? Number 3, staff recommends a restudy of the 2 pool house buildings. We question how tall they are. Number 4, the 2 townhomes that stand alone and are adjacent to the 3-story buildings. I'm referring to these 2 down here. They seem to be a little out of place since they're standing by themselves. Staff suggests adding maybe 1 more townhome if possible. It could have a different floor plan from the others to fit into the space, but we understand if the wetland would prevent that. Number 5, the hardscape plaza around the leasing office is nice with the paving pattern and the tree grid. But staff recommends incorporating some low plantings into the area around the building as well to reduce the amount of paving. Staff recommends some at-grade planting areas as well as some raised planters with seat walls. Number 6, the long stretches of parking. Staff recommends breaking up with more green space, less parking. Number 7, the plant palette is looking nice, but we encourage incorporating even more native planting. The trash compactor, we feel should be relocated out of the first arrival view. Number 9, if there is an opportunity to add a gazebo or a deck as a gathering place on the end of the wetland, this would also be another nice amenity to consider. Number 10, staff recommends incorporating some more pervious pavers on the site. Sounds like you're going to be doing that now. Number 11, staff recommends some specialty paving or tabby walks in more areas. But we do recommend deferral for some of the building's height, scale, mass, see above, and some of the architectural design direction.
Okay, thanks, David. Does the applicant team have anything they want to respond or clarify to?
I guess that the 2-story mass is based on zoning. That will be tough to change a little bit, but I understand.
Even with the height of the pitch of the roof,
Yeah, that would be definitely a good change that we can do. Yeah.
just as
So Dave, I'm sorry, just to jump in. Is it the positioning of the building or is it the architecture itself?
I think it's the design direction of the building,
Yeah,
architecture.
so the void spaces that we created between the buildings and their relationship to each other, that.
I didn't have an issue with that, but I did have a suggestion for more green space around that.
Right. I think Andrew would like as well. I think we follow all of your comments. I certainly appreciate you spending your time.
We're now in board discussion and or a motion.
There was a comment made earlier about not having much neighboring context, and I actually used to live in Carolina Bay, and the courtyard element reminds me a lot of the main park there, which I really appreciated. And even though you are kind of an island here, so to speak, I like that. And I also appreciated the massing video that the board had access to. That was really helpful. I'm not an architect, not the designer on the board, but I kind of like the leasing office, so for what that's worth.
Thank you.
I'll go. All right. Uh, all right, I'll start from where I think you would start and from arrival into the site, looking at the townhouses. I feel like townhouses at the front of the site are very well articulated from an architectural direction standpoint. I think there's some things that you could potentially work out with flat roof or low slope roof transitioning to gable and slope roof, that kind of thing. But I feel like there's been a lot of effort on the townhouse component at the front of the building. And they look refined. I don't know about contextual with that site because there's really not much to draw from, but they do look inviting into the site. As you go in though, looking at like 8.4, I feel like it starts to break down with the multifamily units. I think there's 7 total, I believe, around the courtyard. I applaud the courtyard concept. I think that's nice to have verticality around that open area, open public area. But I feel like the multifamily component really misses, it's like what I said, it just misses an identity. To me, architecturally, it feels foreign to the design direction of the townhouses. And once you get into the courtyards, I don't really have a problem with the pool amenity buildings. I think they tie together okay. I don't know if I'd say they're too industrial or anything like that, but the leasing office does stand out to me as totally foreign. And not to say that it can't be something different, but it looks very, it doesn't look like it's of its place. So for me, I guess, deferral denial, I would deny the multifamily units themselves. I feel like height, scale, and mass of the 4-story and that 4-story block. I don't know if you can, if you look at A.6, David, the 4-story block at the back of the site, it's large. So, I mean, I know we're supposed to be true to what it is. It's a big complex, but from a height, scale, mass, maybe it's broken up more. Maybe there's more variation in the stories. Maybe you mix a 2-story in there with the 4-story, have some breaks. It's just really big U-shaped 4-story building. And really, I feel like all of those multifamily units haven't been developed to the rigor that I saw in the townhouse and even in the pool facility structures. So that's where I am.
I think we agree that there's a lot of nice things going on here, right? In terms of the site plan. First of all, it's a huge amount of units. The courtyard site plan works nicely. The stepping of the stories starting from 2 to 4. That works nicely. But I think there's this, I think we're getting caught up on the housing buildings, right? Where there's kind of an underlying figure fabric idea going on here, where you have your clear figural buildings, those ones in the center of the courtyard. I would include the entry building, where those can need to be a little different, a little bit more architecturally expressive. And then you have your fabric buildings of the housing. And I think the figural buildings I like the drama they bring. I think there could be a little bit of a common thread throughout them. And yeah, I would probably agree with Ben on the housing.
How do you feel about the leasing center? Just curious your thoughts compared to that.
So again, can you go to the rendering?
Oh, no, sorry, that's what I was looking for. Oh, there.
Again, I think it is the moment for that drama, right? To get really specific, I don't know about the articulation of the stepped gable itself, but the fact that it is something really different, the canted plan, I think that works well. The pool amenity, the flat roof building, I like a lot. I think it could do with a little bit more separation from the gabled ones. So why, can you explain the cabling? Or can we ask that question? Can you explain the cabling at the top?
First person. It's just such a unique, we always treat the ridge of buildings in a pretty functional way.
Yeah.
And here's the way of creating the ridge of a building that actually became more sculptural rather than functional in nature. And that just connected that simple gable, bookend type architectural gesture there.
You would be worth.
You know, I almost thought it was like a nod to the power lines going through, like.
So,
It reminded me of the gas station that we have on 17, like, like the way they were playing off the signs, Route 26.
Okay,
So
so
it can definitely do that as well.
you know what
Tax off.
the first thing I thought of, are you guys new urbanists by chance? Or familiar with new urbanist principles? So they kind of tap into the traditional medieval city a lot, and oftentimes the church would be central, and it would be the one that doesn't obey the street grid or whatever, right? And that's what you have here, and it even kind of resembles a chapel, which I like, even though it's a leasing office, I like that kind of aspect of it. But I think the parapet walls the proportion of the steps or something is a little bit off. I think the height is fine. I think the pitch of the roof is fine. Again, with the pool house amenity, I like it. It's somebody called it a jewel box or a piece of jewelry. The other two amenity buildings I think are quite well thought out. I have no problems with the height or anything there. That same sort of playfulness, though, I would like to see at the entry buildings. Right now, the entry building with the townhouses, the sawtooth plan, the flat roofs, that's one of the nicest parts of the projects. But David, could you go to that rendering that shows it?
The townhouse.
Yeah, but then the first bunch of them kind of has this gabled roof plopped on it, and that's kind of an awkward transition to me. It'd almost be nicer if this language could continue to the front and lean into that sawtooth plan or something. But I think that's a good moment to do something really special. The central courtyard buildings, something really special. And the other thing is with that kinked building, I think it's building 3. That's kind of I see as part of the fabric, but then there's another kind of orphaned duplex beside it. That I think could either be incorporated into building 3 or maybe rethought as another little special folly, maybe a amenity or some sort of figural building over there as well. Where's that?
Right here.
Yeah. It seems a bit orphaned. But again, I think what Ben is getting at is, so if you conceive it as kind of 2 architectural languages instead of a whole variety, one for the figural buildings, which has a lot of elbow room for expression, And then one for the fabric buildings. But the fabric buildings, I think is the one that requires a little bit bigger of a recount. Just the general monolithic nature and
I think monolithic is the word.
It
homogeneous.
is very, yeah. And I think the same, I agree with staff about the parking being broken up and,
Yeah.
you know, all that stuff would help. Cause right now it just reads as big mass, big parking.
Well, one outlet, they're almost at 2 spaces per unit. Which is. I mean, I think the 1.5 that the ordinance doesn't work, but
Well, I think gathering place, and I still have like PTSD from working on a gathering place
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
That gathering place doesn't have any parking
I
requirements.
know, but it's still, I mean, if you're still looking for a standard.
Right, but it doesn't, there's 0 parking required for gathering place per
You can
zoning
have as many
ordinance.
as you
You
want.
can have as little as you want.
That's, I guess that's where I'm going with it, is that I don't think 1.5 works as somebody who does a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of multifamily.
Yeah.
The sweet spot tends to be between 1.75 and 1.85, depending on your mix. I will say that it really depends. But
So what are you saying that this is over 2?
this is almost 2, almost right at 2. It's like 1.95.
And if they would,
I think they have room to back off, and I kind of disagree with staff. I think you're wasting those streetscapes in that middle. Is burying the streetscapes in the middle. I mean, you could bring that side parking in and angle it, and you're accomplishing some of those very same things. And I just really feel like that amenity space is on an island rather than being something special. It is, you put it in a sea of asphalt.
you're saying you disagree because they won't plant, it was plantings we suggested around the perimeter?
No, what I'm saying is if you come into the site, and how we as a board have traditionally treated these sites is that what you see is more streetlight than
Well,
a
I think,
parking lot.
correct me if I'm wrong, unless they've changed gathering place zoning, you have to have certain street types in
They
gathering
do.
place. And I don't think it allows for angled parking. I think you have to have.
Well, but what I'm saying is you take what is the street type in the center, which that's what I'm saying is buried in the center.
Mhm.
And you move your street types to the outside and you bring your buildings up to them. And then you put your angled parking in the middle, you're still getting those aren't street types, those are parking lots. But right now, the parking lot is on the outside.
Mhm.
And you're coming in, you're looking at the sides and the back ends of cars. I mean, there's really just no,
See, I think I like the parking on the perimeter because it makes you feel more, I don't know, like,
For sure.
I don't know, but beyond that, I do think that I think there's not a thread of architectural language. There are 3 architectures going on here. There's the townhomes, there's the amenity space, and there's the apartment buildings. And the apartment buildings are huge, which, I mean, especially these 4-story buildings, you get back there and you look at, there's nothing that brings it down to a pedestrian scale.
I don't, but again, I don't think they need to look, the buildings all need to, they shouldn't look the same.
I'm not saying they need to look the
Development,
same, but they need to have a language
Some common thread.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
that moves through, and I think this doesn't have a great sense of arrival. You kind of come in and based on the drawings, this is a split space that you could do something very interesting. And then, once again, I will just say from a management standpoint, so finding this leasing office is going to be very hard.
To find that leasing office?
It's very.
It's one way. It's not that hard to find.
Well,
It's not that great, but it's not hard to find.
I bet you that a lot of people will miss it.
It stands out so different to me. It looks like there was one architect who did this, who was having an internal fight with himself and just threw out 3 different designs. And one of it looks like the Biltmore Village.
Hmm.
That's
will-
what the leasing office reminds me of, like.
The church and the
Far
Biltmore
in
Village.
from Charleston.
Mhm.
But I will say that this area does have a lot of contacts for our apartment.
Yeah.
If any area. in
Good or bad,
Charleston-
yeah.
Good or bad.
Don't follow some of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, and I would say that probably the people in Grand Oaks and Hickory Hills in that area would consider this their neighborhood too. I'm just, at this point, I don't know that I'm prepared to support the deal.
I would say just as a suggestion, as this is being kind of reconsidered. One thing that to me is missing from this completely is any kind of acknowledgement or embracing of the site context. It's kind of like we shove the parking to the outside, we put it on a wall, and then we kind of build a fort around it, we hang out in the middle, so we don't have to see the site around us. And there's a lot of interesting site context around here, and I would hope that that would be at least thought about and maybe embraced a little bit more. How it can kind of become more a part of its landscape context as opposed to just kind of building a wall and turning your back on it.
I would agree. I completely, because I don't think it reacts to the site other than the power line.
The only, I know when Erica mentioned the power lines, I said, that's the only site feature that this site plan even responds to. It's not lined with the roads, the wetlands, it lines up with the power lines. Like that is the one thing it responds to. And so that was funny when you mentioned that about the building. I'm like, yeah, and that's the only site feature that stands out too to me.
That's the
Trash.
dumpster.
So you have it right at the entrance area?
That was one of the things staff's
Yes.
comments. Yeah, it should be moved.
Okay,
Yes, that's.
okay, good. I was like,
Yeah, I will say that the very long, as staff says, the long parking lots do need to be broken up one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then we just have these very long uninterrupted vistas too, you know,
Right.
when you come in, you kind of
I just
look
feel
off into nothingness, you
And
know.
they're just speeding.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean,
Well,
there's
just,
no
yeah.
terminus to any of
Right.
those roads.
One suggestion I was
Right.
considering was having them add rotaries like roundabouts like we did at Founders. Founders was pretty similar to this on the outside where we had them do roundabouts in the middle of these long stretches of parking, so the tree would break up that long view.
Yeah,
But that would require changing the footprint of the building.
Yeah. It would.
well, I mean, I don't know that some of those bigger buildings don't need to be broken down.
I think the footprints need to change some.
Are we at a point where someone can make a motion? Train moving?
Can you make a motion that is a deferral on the main project but denies
We can have split options we have in the past.
certain things?
Yeah, but it's normally been a split motion between site and architecture, not
Yeah.
sites, buildings and buildings. I mean, but
I'm torn because I feel, I do like a lot that's going on. I feel like you've been sensitive to some of the site planning efforts and you know, I like the pool amenity buildings. I like the concept of a courtyard surrounded by larger buildings. But, and I really like the townhouses at the front entrance. But I feel like everything breaks down when you get into the site.
So considering that a denial is kind of a request for a total rethink, right?
I don't think it's a denial in my, at least for me, I'm not gonna vote for
If
denial.
there's enough there that we're supportive of, would a deferral be more appropriate? With an abundance of feedback?
Yeah, I think, to me, I would be okay with the deferral if we denied the multifamily buildings.
yeah,
Your motion, but
So I guess,
I don't think.
but site planning, I would defer to because, I mean, it's not there yet either. don't think it's a denial.
No.
No,
I
no.
think the multifamily buildings in my mind are a denial.
So
They need
you
to
think
be-
height, scale, mass, and architectural
big.
direction?
It's too, yep, architectural direction is not there, high scale mass, especially the 4-story buildings at the back of the site. It's just too much.
I think we have to be careful too, though, about how that's worded. I don't
Out
think,
denying it.
yeah, I mean, I don't think we can be more specific about
So the
why you think it's
architectural
too
direction
much.
of the multifamily apartment buildings, it's just, there's not enough tying together with the other buildings that are proposed, the other design elements on the site, the townhouses, the amenity buildings. They feel architecturally, they feel foreign to the design concept.
Yeah, all of that's, I think when we
Site.
say something's too much from like a height, scale, or mass,
Yeah, the
we
four,
just need to make sure we're clear. We're not saying like lop off a story. Like it has to be very.
no,
Yeah.
it's gotta be broken up. I mean, if you're gonna do 4 stories, I think you can do 4 stories. It's just that huge
How you
swath of
articulate that
But
four
if we
story.
4
If
stories.
he moves for denial, he doesn't have to have conditions with it, right? It's just
No,
denial.
it's just a rethink.
Yeah.
I would say that the biggest, this high scale mass, those 4-story buildings, they can have a 4-story building, they just need to bring it,
Be broken up.
break it down in such a way that it reads with the 3-story buildings around it, and that's happened in several projects in the area, in this area.
Yeah.
There's no consistent architectural thread through all of the buildings presented.
You ready to make a stab at the motion?
I'll try. Y'all help me. Let's see, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for a deferral on the project with staff comments. Y'all stay behind me on this too, with staff comments 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Everything except 2 and 3 is what I,
For deferral.
for deferral.
Okay, what about board comments?
And then board comments. First would be a denial of the architectural direction, height, scale, and mass of the multifamily, the 7 multifamily buildings, I believe it is.
Mhm.
And Aaron, help me out here. To respect the landscape context of the site, have a reaction to the site. How do you want to say that? The site should, the site plan should,
The site planning should embrace the site rather than.
Not
and
the site, but
reflect
the
it.
surrounding area.
Respond to the context.
Yeah,
the
respond
site
to the
plan should
context of the
respond
site.
to the context of the existing site.
So I have a motion for deferral with staff comments 1 and then 4 through 11. Board comments, 1, denial of the architectural direction, height, scale, and mass of the 7 multifamily buildings, and 2, that the site plan should respond to the context of the existing site. Is that correct, Ben? Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Andy. Further discussion?
Always been my understanding that if we deny a portion of an application, that it requires a full restudy. And I guess with the site issues, I'm not sure how they can do a full restudy. I hear what you're saying about the massing of the individual buildings and appreciate that that makes sense. But in terms of the denial, just in like consistency, I can't support that portion of the motion.
I agree. Any other further discussion? Call roll, Ashley?
No.
Aaron?
No.
Stephanie?
No.
Lucas?
No.
I'm also no, so that motion fails.
All right.
Is there
Let's make another motion.
someone else rather make a motion
I'll move to defer the application,
with what comments?
those made by the board this evening.
Okay,
I don't think there really should be any formal comments. I think the applicant has heard a lot of discussion and they can take those comments with them when they come back to us after the deferral.
I think for the record, we need to have comments.
That's fair to say. I think that the comments are the same. We
Right.
just take the denial
Right.
out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Ashley, sorry, you made a motion, so,
I
There
second,
hasn't been a second yet.
okay,
Same.
I second the motion with the same staff comments.
replacing denial. with
Place the
defer-
deny for referral.
Ashley, is that acceptable?
Reviewing the staff comments real quick.
Well, we're adding our board comments. We're just taking the correct.
It's
Yeah.
1 through 11, yeah.
So could you withdraw your motion, Ashley?
I'll make.
So then let
So
Stephanie
just
make a
so
motion.
we can make it clear as to
Yeah,
what we're
'cause-
voting on.
Technically, it hasn't been seconded yet
Okay.
because she wanted to second it with amendment.
Okay.
So we can just make a new motion.
Perfect. Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay, I make a motion to defer the application with staff comments 1 through 11, and then the board's additional comment in regards to the site plan should respond to the existing context of the existing site. And.
Deferral of the architectural direction,
Mhm,
height,
height,
scale, and mass.
mass.
Okay,
Yeah.
just to be clear though,
Multifamily.
are we gonna use the same staff comments that we pulled for the first motion, which would be 1 and then 4 through 7?
Yes, but I was thinking that we did not want staff comments 2 and 3.
Correct.
Full house, okay. Full house.
Okay, so we have a motion for deferral based on staff comments 1, 4 through 11. Board comments, defer, restudy the architectural direction, height, scale, and mass of the 7 multifamily buildings, and 2, to the site plan should respond to the context of the existing site. Is there a second?
I'll stop that.
Thank you, Lucas.
No, that's fine.
Any further discussion? Call roll, Ashley,
Yes, in favor.
Aaron,
No.
Ben,
I'm a no.
Andy?
No.
I'm also yes in favor. So did that get us 4 to 3?
That was
Yeah.
yes. And who were second? Who made a second?
Lucas?
Oh, and then, yeah, 4 to 3.
Yeah, 4 to 3.
Because
Yes, 4 to 3 passes. All right, next on the agenda is 660 Hayes Park requesting preliminary approval for a new 1-story restaurant.
I'll take it.
we've seen this project before, so I have no context, so we can jump right up. Lassie, you can jump right in. Okay. Let me know when you get that. Likely to advance the slide.
They might select their presentation.
I'll leave you in the capable hands of Andy.
Andy's gonna be chair now. I'll take that. Okay.
All right, good evening, I'm Lossy Knight with LFK Architects, and I'm here with Mike Johnson from Boardberg Engineering, and also Richard Kalari and Jesse Long, owner reps, and then Hayward Townsend as well, for landscape architecture. So I think we were here in March to see you guys, and we had conceptual approval, and it's taken a little bit of time to figure out some of the responses and rework some of the architecture. We've got about 70 pages in our presentation, but I'm going to try to condense it to the first 8 just to kind of tackle the comments we've received before, and then we can open it up to any questions. So David, maybe we can go to the site. Maybe, I think 1 or 2 slides forward, we'd have some of the enlarged ones, so. Mike, feel free to jump in if I miss anything, but the first staff comment was 2 foot high knee wall at the outdoor dining area called out on the site plan, landscape plans. I just think we had to adjust the note to correct that, item number 1. Item number 2 was the knee wall at the outdoor seating has breaks. And so we had, I'll address this too once we get to the architectural part of the presentation, but there were some small little breaks to break up the length of this knee wall around the outdoor courtyard. So we built that based on staff recommendations and our own studies with some ornamental slat work, kind of separated from the landscape. Item 3 was note the outdoor dining and outdoor waiting for decorative concrete to be removed. We had just simply a bad note on our drawing, so we removed the note from civil and landscape, and the architecture covers the decorative concrete for that area. Item 4, under staff comments, some additional native plants are recommended and provided. If we can proceed a few more slides, we should get to the landscape plan here in a second. There we go, yeah. And so Hayward Townsend is here and can respond on anything landscape wise. I didn't know if you guys wanted to address the site first and then building later, or just kind of run through all of them.
You can just run through it.
Okay, so I think we've done some improvements to include the native plants, and Hayward can elaborate on that if we need to. Item 5, study the trash enclosure access, location and screening, and provide tall landscaping. So we did reorient that over here. We provided some landscaping, and this is sort of detailed in some of the building drawings as well. I think it's a lot more accessible than it was before. And finally, if we go to the board comments, we can go ahead and jump towards the architectural. I think, yeah, right there. That's, if we can back it right there, yeah. And I'm sorry, David, just one more backwards there. Oh, yeah, thank you. Very good. And so you guys probably remember Hayes Park is a little mixed-use community. So we've got commercial, roughly 5 acres of smaller kind of cottage-like commercial in front of Maybank. And then we have mixed use of single-family and multifamily that happen just behind it. So we've got roughly 130 feet of frontage. Next slide, please. And then you probably recall that our site is really heavily wooded along this front buffer, 75-foot buffer with oak trees, and we're maintaining a lot of that existing sidewalk. And this is a corner of Hayes Park Boulevard and Maybank Highway. Next slide. All right, so this upper image here shows our proposed streetscape context. Again, we have the commercial village that happens along Maybank. Some of the buildings vary from 1 story to 2 stories. We're down here at 20 feet, 6 inches for our proposed ridge height. Just kind of gives you a sense of how this fits into the context along Maybank Highway. Next slide, please. So getting back to the board comments and addressing those, we thought just kind of doing these 3-dimensional views of the previous and proposed might be the easier way to address it. We also have some other views within the presentation if we need to get to it that actually shows these in the site context. We've turned off some of the landscaping from Maybank because it is quite dense and you really can't see the building that well. But most of the comments we received last time really apply more to the rear elevations. So I'll just kind of quickly touch on the front and then we'll get to the rear. But one of the main things we did was we elongated and reproportioned this dining room wing of the building. So the kitchen is on this side, the dining room is on this side. So really sort of expanded this side and created a little bit more hierarchy on this side. And then the hyphen in the middle, some of the comments we've received about doing away with some of the white highlights here at the hyphen, making more of an opaque mechanical screen. So we tried to integrate all those into the comments. Next slide, please. So on this slide, this is the rear of the building. So we have Hayes Park Boulevard here, and this is our turn into the building. So previously, this is the kitchen area here, still programmed the same way with kitchen here, and dining area on this side. But really, there was a comment about this kitchen needs to be somewhat subservient to the primary dining area. So we have removed, it's hard to see, we've removed this gable feature that was here. We've also removed this mechanical well, kind of consolidated everything over the hyphen. We've simplified this service entry to the kitchen. So kind of gotten rid of some of the side lights and gone to a single entry door there, reduced the canopy. And then added this accent feature here with signage and lighting to kind of pull people towards our outdoor entry courtyard. We provided a little bit more of an understated door here at this hyphen. So previously we had 2 two doors and side lights, and it really sort of looked like the entry to the restaurant, but it really was never the intention. So if we were to look at this from a plan standpoint, you'll see this is a door that really emulates the proportion of these punched windows. And we're really just using it for exit only from the interior, just to meet assembly requirements for egress for the restaurant. I think there was also a comment about just considerations for the electrical meter, and previously it was sort of in this position. So we've done a little bit of redesign and articulation of the facade along the kitchen, and we have these little kind of recessed bays that emulate the windows, and we've tucked the the electrical into one of those little niches to kind of make it secondary. I think that covers most of those comments. Next slide, please. And then finally, we get to our entry courtyard. This is our exterior entry courtyard. So we have previous and proposed. We really didn't have the entry courtyard that well defined or designed at conceptual. So we've sort of eliminated some of the funky triangulated space, kind of nipped that off, replaced it with landscape. We have a little more of an organized courtyard with these bench features that start to match some of the features of the building. We've added a tabby stucco knee wall with Savannah brick capped off, then layered that against this living fence here, which provides a little separation from the adjacent parking and the power line easement. So really kind of creating and defining this outdoor space a little more. Again, you can see the mechanical well that was removed, and then the screening for the kind of consolidated future mechanical for the restaurant. And then, David, I think we can go next one or two slides, should be the plans yet. So previous and proposed plans, our square footage has not changed on the floor plans. I've already sort of addressed the different doors that have been modified on the plan. Next slide, please. The roof plan probably best shows how we've elongated this primary gable roof here over the entry dining area, and kind of had this from a height scale mask provide a little more hierarchy in the whole building facade. And lastly, if we can jump to the materials palette, I think that's going to be near the end. Yeah, there we go. There. So the materials palette that I think was previously approved, we really haven't changed that. We wanted to stay with these same materials as specified, but if there's any questions on those, we're happy to respond.
Any more questions?
I had one question. Looks like the previous submittal, I wasn't here for that previous submittal, but previous submittal versus the proposed and the venting in the attic. Looks like you're showing gable vents in the attic space, but sections show spray foam up there. Are they faux gable vents?
They are, yeah. It's just a simulated sort of, I think on the elevations, you'll see it there.
Go to A2.201, David, if you can. The reason I'm asking is it looks like they're shown on one side of the building and then not on the other side.
Yeah.
A201.
I think I met. I pass it. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, like you see it there,
Yeah,
you're not there.
yeah, you're exactly right. We probably need to show it in both places or rather remove it.
Just curious. Thank you.
Hearing none, the public comment? Hearing none, staff recommendations.
Thank you, Andy. Staff observations. This project has progressed nicely. Staff is happy with how the building has turned out. The design is nice. Most of the previous staff and board comments were addressed in this submittal, except number one below. But staff can accept the applicant's responses that the electric panel is not screened with a fence due to the lack of room for this, and since this equipment is to be painted the same colors of the facade, we're fine with that. Staff is good with the color choices, material choices, and the lighting pictures proposed. Staff comment number one, the walls and the two patios are still not called out on either the landscape plan or the site plan. nor the details of the wall referenced on either of those plans. Staff comment number 2, see page 25. Let me go to that. Looking into the view of the outdoor seating area, staff recommends eliminating these benches and making this a seat wall instead. It might make it will make for a little more space on the patio. Number 3, the trash enclosure was moved only slightly, but there does not seem to be a better option for its location with the tight site. The applicants are also providing viburnums to screen the trash enclosure, which will be efficient screening to soften the enclosure. Number 4, the site plan shows a living wall fence east of the main entry with a note that says to refer to the landscape plan, but this wall and the plants specified are not on the landscape plan. Number 5, there appears to be almost no space between the building and the sidewalk on the side of the parking lot. We typically like to see some foundation plantings. Most of the site plans do not define this space, and there were no plants specified here. A sheet A100 shows this as a narrow planting bed. Staff suggests incorporating planting into this narrow space, and if you could increase the width of this planting strip a bit, it could allow for more successful plants. But we do recommend preliminary approval with the conditions noted and final review by staff.
In response by the applicant.
With response, I think that's a great idea, David, with the idea of taking the benches out and creating more of a seating area in there that we can expand that space.
Yeah.
So I think that,
We're in board discussion on motion.
Great. Anything to add? Have to make a motion unless someone has a comment.
My only comment is either delete the faux gable fence or make it consistent.
Well, typically, we've said if they're not functioning, then.
Take them out, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a small thing that I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts. Can you go to the plan? And I don't know if maybe we should.
Site plan or building?
Building plan. Maybe we should have picked this up before, or the hyphen parapet is clipping the fly rafter on the gables, and I'm wondering if just pulling through the walls of the hyphen on each side would help with the reading of it, because it's pretty coplanar right now. And you'd also avoid that clipping. If you want to go to the rendering, David.
Showing the hyphen?
Yeah, the parapet is kind of intersecting with the fly rafter.
Is that-
on the rake? No, keep going. Right there. Go to the
The
other
next
side.
one.
Right there. So I don't know if.
Is it hitting it? Oh, yeah, it is, yeah.
You talking about right here?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's just, the hyphen is, as an architectural device, is meant to be kind of quite subservient to the rest of the structure, and I think it just being super, it's almost in the same plane, right? But again, that ship might have sailed, because that's kind of a height scale massing thing. Recognizing that they've probably developed the plan quite a bit since then, so.
Well, the reason we might not have noticed it before is on the conceptual. This is actually shown as this
What?
building color. So it wouldn't have stood out here like it does now in the rendering.
Can that parapet get a little lower?
Or could the wall get pushed back a little bit?
It's probably easier to make the a little bit lower.
Or is neither of them?
the truth is that we've talked about the depth of that roof system, the parapet, right? And we need to do some structural engineering to see how minimal it could be. I think we could lower it a little bit.
That's what you
Or
want.
potentially-
You wanted to go past the.
Or potentially recess the hyphen a little bit too.
Yes.
It's
Because I
not
saw-
study, I'm just saying, that. You know, it sounds like that they still need some structural design work in there.
I think it could be addressed.
Okay, because all the thinning of the structure, the exposed structure, looks real nice.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion for preliminary approval with staff comments, 1, 2, 3, 4. Board comment, delete faux cable vents. And final review by staff of the parapet hyphen.
I'm gonna be by stop for everything.
Yeah, and but that's your intent is for them to review that. It's not coming back. to
Yeah,
us.
that, I think we could just add that as a board
Right,
comment.
include-
Board comment to study the parapet hyphen.
Parapet versus rake relationship, yeah.
And just for clarification, 1 through 4, because 5 is not, is just a suggestion. You can add 5 because it's just a suggestion. Yeah, comment.
Oh, did I miss 5?
You said 1, you said 1
Oh,
through
you
4.
added a number. You added a 5.
Oh, gosh, I think you all didn't get that. Yeah.
I got it.
Are you good?
Take credit.
Well,
for-
the
you didn't-
electronic copy, I
you
think, only
used
had.
electronic.
I used my prints.
Yeah.
1 through 5.
Okay, 1 through 5. Yes,
But then with the staff
Sorry.
comments, 2 board comments.
yes.
Okay, so we have a motion,
I second.
preliminary approval. Let me read
Okay.
do it, just so we have it. Motion for preliminary approval with staff comments 1 through 5. To delete the faux cable vents and to study the relationship with the rake and the your parapet. And final approval by staff. And Stephanie seconded. So I'll call roll. Ashley,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
I'm yes in favor. So motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is 3575 Maybank Highway. Preliminary approval for the renovations of the existing shopping center.
We've seen this project before. Do you know how many context wise? Carol, you can step right up if you like. Oh.
So I'm Haley Roderick with Middleton Group. Here for preliminary DRB approval for the Jones Island Shopping Center. I'm also here with Maria Vegas from Outdoor Spatial Design, representing the landscape architects. As a reminder, this project is facade alteration to an existing shopping center, along with an addition to the main grocery entry. First, I want to go over some of the staff comments we got back in May when we got conceptual approval. You go to slide 8902. Our first comment was about signage. The staff asked that owners do an inventory of existing signage to remove any non-permitted illegal signs. We just wanted to make a point that the owner is doing an inventory of signage and all existing signage will be removed for the renovation. We're showing areas where new building signage can go, and these will all be submitted separately for approval. And then if we go to A906. We had another comment about the Lowe's green colors. I think the staff was just asking it to not be a neon green and instead be more of a subdued green. And I do have the sample of the green we're using, so it's a pretty muted green. And this is a standard Lowe's color that we're matching, so. And that's really just on our fascia at this new entry. And then we had 2 landscape comments, so I'd like to turn it over to the mayor.
Yeah, as Haley said, I'm Marissa Gurius with Outdoor Spatial Design, landscape architect. Yeah, so one of the comments was adding new native plantings. And so by doing that, we're creating a more low maintenance overall. And then specifically around the pond areas, it's gonna help soften and screen those ponds that exist now, and as well as block a lot of trash and leaf litter that's getting in there now, which I think would help diminish that water quality issues that are happening. And then with the fence comment, we've made a note on the plans to straighten any, leaning posts and paint them along with the cables as well.
Okay, so since we've responded to those comments, I just want to do a quick walkthrough of any updated details we have. So if you could go back to A902, please. Just going over some of the finishes that we've selected. We're showing a lighter brick with a sand finish to contrast some of the darker elements. Sorry, I have a sample over here. So it's a lighter, like whitewash sand finished brick that we want to contrast with some of these darker metal roof panels. And then we have this ACM set at these new entry towers. And then between the brick columns, we're also showing this, it's a wood look aluminum panel, but they're 8-inch siding panels. Are made of aluminum. We go to the next slide. This is the Lowe's entry. So this is where the addition's happening. And we have the same brick and same ACM elements. But we also have this Lowe's, along with their standard green, they have this standard yellow color that they usually have a specific siding they'll do. So we're showing that behind their signage at their entry. And then we're also showing these mass timber elements and columns at this entry.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I was
We can
gonna,
keep going.
I was gonna show this view.
Yes, so this view is also showing, or we have like a new hardscape element. We're showing scored concrete with a rock salt finish, just to give some emphasis to the new entry. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that all the storefront, we're showing black to match what's existing on site. It's black storefront. With that, I think we can go to the elevation sheet. So it should be A200.
Oh.
It should be further.
Oh,
They're kind of out of order, sorry.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out, we're showing the existing elevations of what's currently there and then what we submitted for conceptual approval. And this is our new elevations. And we mostly are showing just updated materials and colors. You go to the next sheet. Maybe one more. Oh, I also wanted to point out that we do have a few areas like this back parapet wall where we're showing 10-inch nickel gap siding that we've just chosen this light gray color, just kind of hide it a bit and complement the brick. Oh, and in this elevation, it's kind of hard to see, but we do also have these exterior pendants that are hanging down between the mass timber columns, which I have on a separate slide later. But if you continue to A203, I also wanted to point out that we've returned at these new entry towers, we're showing the brick and ACM returning back to the existing parapet wall. So it gives the entry towers a little more substance and not just look like a fake facade kind of stuck on. And then if you continue to the wall sections, this is at the new grocery entry, just kind of showing some details of the covered entry and the mass timber elements. And then the next slide kind of points out, so this is through the new tower entries and the walkways. And we're showing that we're also adding a slat ceiling in these spaces just to give a bit more comfortable scale for the pedestrians walking through it. And then if we go to the finishes slide, these are all the finishes we've selected, and I have samples of most of them here if you guys would like to see them. But I did also want to point out the pendants that we were showing at the Lowe's entry. And I think that wraps it up. If you guys have any questions.
Right, any board questions?
I have a very quick one. The you have the aluminum, the full wood aluminum cladding. And in one point, it's kind of adjacent to the mass timber columns. Is the plan to kind of stain the columns to roughly match, or are you gonna let them weather and just be different than the cladding?
I think we're planning on keeping them more natural looking with a transparent coating. I don't know if we go back to the renderings, but I don't think they're ever directly adjacent to the wood look siding.
Oh, so that soffit is real wood?
Yes. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, no, we're showing,
That's the aluminum stuff, right?
no, that, I think we haven't totally worked through the details if we're doing real wood or if we're wanting to go back to, we're showing those slat ceilings, that's just like a fiber cement trim that we're painting. But it's definitely not the aluminum siding.
Any other questions?
The roof over the grocery right there, that, is that, and I'm just asking, but potentially could see, it looks like it's, is it a membrane roof or is it standing seam roof? It's called out as both.
That was it. We're showing membrane roofing. If we had. gold-
Just causes a different detail and stuff up in it.
Okay.
So it's membrane roofing?
Membrane.
Okay.
I don't see any public comment. Staff recommendations.
Thank you, Andy. The applicants have satisfied the previous staff comments. They subdued the Lowe's grocery bright green, added plant material around the retention pond, added a note to repair the pond post and cable as needed, and they promised to remove the illegal temporary signage. Staff supports the material and colors proposed for this renovation, and we recommend preliminary approval with final review by staff.
Do you have any responses? It's going to the form. For discussion and a motion.
It's a great looking renovation. Make a motion for preliminary approval. Final review by staff.
Like second?
Okay, we have a recommendation for preliminary approval. No comments, seconded by Stephanie. Call roll, Ashley,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
I am also yes in favor.
Thank you all.
And final item is the approval of minutes from the May 20th and June 17th DRB meetings.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the May 20th meetings with one addition, what I already talked to staff about for agenda item number 4, 3575 Maybe Highway. We did have a conceptual approval with staff comments 1 through 4. So just want to make sure that that's reflected in the minutes.
So we have a recommendation for approval with noted comments. Do we have a second?
Second.
I will call roll. Stephanie. Ben.
Yes, in favor?
Lucas. Yes. I am no. Yes, in favor.
I was not present for the